Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Solomon, and I'd like to welcome you to my final presentation over gross domestic products and Asian Pacific nations comparative study. Some keywords and phrases that'll be involved in my research are gross domestic product, imports, exports, social developments, literacy rates, education rates, infant mortality rates, political structures, and social structures. I'm willing to supersede or remove altogether any of these words or phrases, provided I'm unable to come across and collect enough information, enough cogent information that I can use to build up on my argument. Furthermore, if any of these phrases or a phrase I supplant with any of these, I find lesser information on, but I find information that could build up on another of these words that I feel can add to my argument. I might add that to my project, although in all actuality, it would likely get a less amount of time focused on than any of the more pertinent phrases. My research focus will be on a comparison analysis between the Taiwanese and Chinese social standards, and then it will be further compared with four other neighboring Asian Pacific countries. The number of countries that I should end up using in the end to compare to Taiwan and China is loosely set at four, but similar to the phrases aforementioned, if I'm unable to find enough pertinent information, I'm fully willing to supplant or altogether remove the comparison of one or hopefully not two of the countries I'll be comparing. I'll research differences and similarities on both Chinese and Taiwan, uh, on the ability of both Chinese and Taiwan to be able to manage both their political and social structures, as well as how that may lead to potential economic growth. The result I find in my initial investigation will then be further compared with the other East Asian countries that I end up using. I'm looking to examine the economic trends and political structures in each, as well as their gross domestic products and how it's contrasted with the aforementioned matters, if at all, or if there's a correlation between the aforementioned matters, if at all. Presently, I would like to include South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and Indonesia in the separate neighboring countries that I research, as well as Taiwan and China, as previously mentioned. Although, in the chance that not enough information is found, as I said, I'm fully willing to supplant any of these, save for the People's Republic of China and the Democratic People's Republic of China. My topic is important because through comparison of political structures paired with socioeconomic trends as in these nations, correlations should be as observable between the government systems and social structures, as well as notable differences when contrasting opposite forms of governments or social structures. And this topic is interesting because, in my opinion, it can, in theory, be observed to help others understand such matters beyond East Asian countries, and possibly, by extension, other countries that may share similar political or social systems, matters such as international relations, international rivals, a country's strengths or its main export, or a country's success in government rulings should be able to be better understood. Personally, I find an interest in researching this topic because I feel this information could be used to help in teaching about the norms as well as the various practices or cultures, as well as their differences of the different societies in question. And furthermore, other societies that may share any of the norms or similarities as the societies in focus. With a more close up investigation into how a government runs a country, as well as the satisfaction the populace of each respective nation, the success of a country is unquestionable. A brief list of materials I would like to use is a recently published article or articles discussing recent social and political occurrences in these respective countries, some local newspapers, respectively, books that address the structure of governments to the countries in question, or articles that address such, lists of imports and exports pertaining to each country, as well as peer reviewed articles that have to do with living in these countries. I would also like to obtain some books or articles pertaining to social norms in the countries that I end up researching. If at all possible, I feel as though books or also pertaining websites or blogs meant to be used for those going on holiday in these countries could possess some general information over social norms. And I'm also led to think through no more than, though no more than tentatively, that a blog post or website could offer some candid information from somebody who was in one of these countries recently or who is currently living in any of these countries that should be useful. Among the information I find, I intend for the scope of my evidence, which I end up using, to be within the 21st century. Furthermore, I would love to keep what information I use to be within the last 15 years, but ideally, the ideal scope would be between 2010 and 2022. However, similar to something I addressed previously, if I can find information that extends further beyond or further back out of my scope or preferred scope, then I might include that if I feel it'll add weight and bolster my argument with further evidence within my scope. My literature review of the background includes, for the most part, online editions of the Encyclopedia Britannica that I used to uh, for each country respectively. And I've also come across articles which are explicitly going over what the notable resources within the countries I chose to address include that I feel are also viable as resources. Furthermore, I've come across additional articles which go over further information I would like to include throughout my research. I believe a nation with a gross domestic product in the positives is bound to open more opportunities and services for both the country's people as well as international relations With these consequences, in turn, I believe the satisfaction of life among the populace will improve and subsequently likely increase the rates at which the GDP is able to increase. However, I also believe that the opposite is just as true, that a country with a negative GDP will result in an unsatisfied populace, which will which will lead to uh, disorderly conduct and a loss of international and domestic opportunities, both for the populace and for international relations. Some major concepts uh, that I've operationalized is how gross domestic product, or the total value of goods and services provided in a country during its fiscal year of a nation in the Asia Pacific region. In this research, I'll investigate the key resources or the main exports which typically originate in a country, and each country's exports or products and services sold by a country internationally, and imports or commodities and services a country brings in from other nations. All these factors are important in a nation's economic health and, by extension, the welfare of a nation's populace. Furthermore, I'd like to investigate the welfare of the people of each respective nation as well, and if there exists any correlation between a country's economy and this matter. For instance, a country with a good economy could, and theoretically should, possess a population with a good welfare by focusing, and vice versa as well. By focusing on these aspects here, I believe I will be able to incorporate this information, which plays a key role in most nations' economies, into my research. I would like my research to be focused on a correlate or a comparative analysis between Asia Pacific nations. I intend to start with societal standards that are or that have recently been present in China and Taiwan, and then would like to further compare this information I gather between these two nations to four other, or again, however many other neighboring countries of the Asia Pacific. However, the number of countries is still in the air. I would like to research how China and Taiwan are able to manage their political and social structures, and how that could lead to economic growth. The results I find will then be further compared. Okay. I intend to gather my information from literature pertaining to these countries, respectively, of course. I shall be re Of these, I have presently taken advantage of the availability of encyclopedias, news articles, as well as general articles pertaining to particular topics I'm going over at the time. Although, now that I have learned more about these nations, I'm aiming to discuss. It has crossed my mind that performing an interview or possibly two might be in my favor. Uh, Doing an interview might be able to allow me a more in-depth perspective on a member of the population of one or two of these countries, as opposed to just getting my information from firsthand sources I can hear a firsthand source in person as and furthermore, they may be able to provide me further information that I might not think of at the time. Regarding my proposal question, my methods of research as well as the outcomes of gathering my data and my information that I initially expected, it remains consistent. It's actually expanding further than I had initially thought it would. Initially, I thought it was going to be a simple yes, no, black, white. Is this a comparison? Yes, it is because of that. But now I'm seeing that the matter include is much more complicated and includes a much more complex structure of ups and downs. I firmly believe that the research question I was proposing here is entirely able to be answered. Although, as I've mentioned above, it may not be as simple as I initially believed prior to beginning my research. Finding an answer to the question I'm proposing remains entirely possible within what wherewithal I'm currently allowed, both time and jurisdiction at all. Some potential different difficulties I may come across is how I can foresee, similar to what I've said a moment ago, I can see my restrictions of time availability, uh, as well as what jurisdictions I'm currently allowed with what rank I have where I am as a student who has no more than an undergraduate degree at the moment, as well as a civilian, as well as a foreigner. I can see all of these and unsurprisingly more restricting me from gathering as much information as I would prefer or as much in-depth understanding as I would prefer to have. Furthermore, the completion and by proxy, the removal of all of the contradictions of other varying obligations that are now crowding my schedule, which are begging for my attention constantly. I feel removing these or getting rid of these at pace should allow me, obviously, more time to focus on my research, as well as more opportunities to go further into depth on my research. Thank you all for being here. Here are all of my sources.